Naland West Province, and my name is Jennifer Nomsamplana. Thank you.
I'm Maboka Kisa, representing Manchester Province from Usumba Maramba Fungo.
I'm Mabel Katazo, representing Manchester Province, Mrewa constituency.
Piharitados MP Musezu Kusingo Simadoro Ngesi.
Matubego Fungo constituency, the Midlands.
Innocent Pesai Churumanzo constituency.
Good morning, my name is John Holder. I represent Shishawani Ngezi constituency.
Morning, my name is Teti Chisoro Chengo. I represent Midlands.
Morning, my name is Lwazi Spanda. I represent Matebele North Province.
Salvonan Lonke, Prosper Chapfion Mskawan constituency.
Good morning to us all. Ramigio Matangira, Bindura South constituency in Mashonal and Central Province.
Salbonani, Ibizolami ngo Anele Ndebele, Wema Kwekwe.
Simon Chidagwa is my name. I represent Zengeza West in Chitumbisa.
Morning, everyone. My name is Basilia Majaya, Member of Parliament for my Central Province.
Good morning. My name is Feni Chirisa, representing Manicaland Province.
Salbonani, Ibizilami ngo Sefani Munengami, representing Glenview.
Good morning. My name is Tonga Ems and Good West Mashengo Province.
Morning. My name is Jota Fanana. I represent Berengwa North constituency in the Midlands Province. How is Junior Chivayo?
Mangwana Nakanaka in Nons Robert Mkwena, Childs North Mashengo Province.
Mamuka say, don't say Chikomba. Woke Kabuyuni.
Morning, Dorothy Mashoganyika from Mashonal and Central Province. I represent Bindrasham.
Mr. Chivayo, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, Honorable Chairman and Honorable members of this august House. My name is Mr. Wicknell Chivayo. I'm the Managing Director and Shareholder of Intratech Zimbabwe Private Limited. Thank you.
You know that when you come into Parliament, you must have tie and a jacket.
My apologies, I was not warned, Chairman.
Now, I'll certainly accept it today because it's really taken us a while to have you here, so we'd rather have you here than to ask you to go home and be properly dressed. So we will entertain your dress code. The other at the back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think, Mr. Chivayo, we've got a lot of assistants who can do that job. I think there's more for you to come than to be assisting. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bruce Tokwe. With me here is my colleague, Mr. Farai Zoa. We are from Bruce Tokwe Commercial Law Chambers. We represent the shareholders of Intratech Zimbabwe Private Limited.
Okay. Thank you very much. Members, I don't know if you... Are there any issues, members? I think I'm here.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Why does Mr. Chivayo bring the lawyers? We are not going to try him. It's just a briefing, an oral evidence. We just want to hear from him. It's not a court that is under trial. So really, there's no need for him to be defended by the lawyers. What would they want to defend? We are not going to raise charges against Mr. Chivayo.
I hear you. Why don't you allow the proceedings to go on. If the thing lawyers come in, then you bring a stop of order. They say they are lawyers representing shareholders. He is one shareholder and there are many others. So let us allow the process to go on. At any time, if you think that they are defending him, then you raise the red flag. Let us allow the process to continue.
Honorable Chairman, for the record, I didn't invite them. They came on their own accord. I just met them outside. I came alone.
Precisely why they are here. They think represent the shareholders of Intratech, and as a result, they are here to do that. So allow them to be here, allow the process to go on. They've told you who they are. They are representing other shareholders. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Chairman. In actual fact, who invited the lawyers to Parliament?
The lawyers came through. They said Mr. Chivayo was being invited as Intratech. They've introduced themselves to who they are. It's an Intratech issue with Intratech other shareholders. Okay, hold on. This says, media, can you just be excused? Thank you. And all the witnesses, can you be excused? Thank you.
I swear that the evidence that I'll give is the truth, nothing else but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm just interested in knowing what the shareholder structure for the Intratech. I just want to know whether the percentage that is represented by the Learned Friends.
I think I will ask that to Mr. Chivayo. First of all, the first question is who's Intratech? So in my introduction, I think we'll pick all those up. If there's any issue which I've missed out, you can bring in the point of order. Mr. Chivayo, thank you very much for coming to this committee after a long while of getting you here. And let me congratulate you on your son. We did your baby. We did get a note that you were seeing the birth of your son, which is important. As Parliament, we respect that. We are not here on any witch hunting escapade as members of Parliament. We are exercising our role of oversight. And I think we are equally here to also take on any challenges that you might have in the process. We are here to hear from you on the issues which you were written about. First of all, the detailed explanation on the tender awarded to you by the Zimbabwe Power Company for the National Solar Project, including the payment processes and the method of the transactions and the progress to date. I think these are the three key issues that we want to ask. But before we go into that, who is Intratech? And in saying who Intratech is, can you also break down the shareholding and the names of the shareholders? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Intratech Zimbabwe is owned by...
Point of order.
Yes, Honorable, what's the point of order?
My point of order is we have got ZESA management, ZETDC people actually in the balcony. Are they supposed to be here?
In the balcony.
Say.
In the gallery, it's okay.
What's the issue? Conflict of interest. Maybe intimidation.
What are those galleries for and for who? We must be very clear on that and not start other rules. Those galleries were not built by anyone. What are they for? There are people who come in to think, listen. They don't participate, they just listen. So what harm can they be in thing listening? Unless somebody in the gallery participates, then there's a conflict of interest.
Speaker.
Put the speaker.
I think members of parliament must be sober in saying to ourselves, what damage? I think I'm in the chair, and I think we want to continue with this. What harm will they do by being sitting in there and listening? I need you to guide me on that, because there's no written issue on who comes to sit in the gallery. Yes, Honorable Matambalanto.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, indanchifunga kuti in short ndafuna kuti nawe ndaifambire mberi kugara kwakaita vanhu mugararo asina nebasa resimaone rangu nokuti even it has kuti vaone vaziya munhu wekuzesa ko dai vangachinza vamuziye taita sei taimboenda mberi nebasa handika. And at the same time tikatarira panawe hatisi kutsvaga mhosva asi tokuda kuti tigadzirise handika toda chokwadi saka ivo vari kuzesa ndavanzwe chokwadi chachabusa munhu tichitaura nawe. I don't think there's any problem.
Mr. Chivayo, may you proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Intertrek Zimbabwe is a local company that I formed in 2012, and shareholders are Mr. Wicknell Chivayo, myself, who I own 50%, and my partner, Mr. Yusuf Ahmed, who is also owns a company called Intermurian Investments, so he's also a 50% shareholder.
With the reason why you are here. The first question is, can you give us a detailed explanation on the tender awarded to you by ZPC?
Okay. All right, thank you, Chairman. First of all, just as a point of correction, the tender was awarded to me by the State Procurement Board and not particularly by ZPC. In 2012 towards 2013, ZPC advertised a tender in all newspapers. They advertised the tender for 100 megawatt solar farm they called it Gwanda Plum Tree Solar Farm. As they advertised the tenders in the newspapers, as I bought the newspapers, I went to ZPC to buy a document. The document was $10. After buying the tender document, I had a lot of interest in the project because I had various technical partners world over who I thought I could partner with and participate in the project. So after buying the document, we attended a pre-bid conference. This pre-bid conference was well attended by maybe over 70 companies, where they outlined to us how they intend to implement the project and where they want the project to be and certain guidelines that were required. I traveled after this pre-bid conference, I traveled to Germany, where I met various companies that are involved in solar energy. One was Greenfield Solar Energy, and then the other one was Freytag, and I had discussions with them. Upon having discussions with them, we agreed on a certain criteria we would use to participate and prepare a bid for the tender.
When he went through this tender thing, he finished the State Procurement Board with regard to the issue of having a criminal record. Did he put it to that he went through that before? since it's part of a condition.
I think what I would do is it is the first question that will be asked after his presentation. It will certainly be asked. Okay, may you proceed?
Also, should I answer the question? Or
No,
should I-
you answer it later. Proceed.
Okay. So we then submitted a new bid with Chint Electric at a cost of 173 million. Adjudication commenced, and obviously the processes take time until we had a few other challenges, problems with the pricing envelope, delivery duty paid. It was a long process. It had been, one envelope was cancelled. We had to put in new envelopes, but eventually in 2015, we were then awarded as the lowest bidder to specification for the Gwanda 100 megawatt solar farm. In other words, we won as the cheapest at the Gwanda solar farm. Then the other company, ZTE, won at Blawayo and Sukamini. Then the other company, Metallurgical, MCC 17, won at Munyati. So there was the 300 megawatts solar farms. Soon after winning, in terms of the State Procurement Board laws, a contract should be signed within 30 days or 45 days. We then started contract negotiations. We negotiated our contracts with our lawyers. Chint Electric came through. After negotiating the contract in October, on the 20th, in 2015, we then signed the 100 megawatt solar farm. After signing the contract, as part of the contract, ideally, you negotiate the contract how you want, and it's a question of one company can have a completely different contract with the other company because it's based on how you negotiate. So during our negotiations, I had negotiated for pre-commencement works, but they were not prerequisite or mandatory. We just agreed that we may have pre-commencement works as the project proceeds. After the contract was signed, we needed a feasibility, a bankable feasibility, which the banks obviously require before they can even look at the funding of any project. They want to know if the project is feasible. So I engaged a company from China, obviously because I had Chinese partners. I thought a feasibility from a Chinese company would be much better. So I engaged a company called Shanghai Electric Power Design Institute, which is the biggest and the best in the Shanghai area, and as well Chint is also in Shanghai, and we were also going to go and present our loan application based on the Shanghai China Exim branch, so everything would have been work out easier if it's done in Shanghai. So Shanghai Electric Power Design Institute came through to Zimbabwe. They went and stayed at the site for about 3 weeks, had all their small solar panels and equipment to test the feasibility to see if indeed the sun from Zimbabwe can generate energy that can go into the national grid. They did all their tests and they went back to Shanghai. As soon as they got to Shanghai, they prepared a comprehensive document, which is the feasibility study, which they then presented to me and said, Mr. Chivayo, we finished the feasibility. That's obviously the first step because there was no feasibility. We had just gone to tender without a feasibility. So when I got the feasibility, in terms of the contract, as part of the pre-commencement works, the feasibility was there at a cost of 2.1 million. And then we had agreed that the pre-commencement works would limit them to $4 million. And we had agreed that we would do $1 million a month, and we outlined the works that would classify under the pre-commencement works. The basis of doing this was we just wanted to have some sort of activity to say, take for instance, we have the feasibility. If any of the financiers for the local portion, if China Exim was going to put 85%, if any of the the financiers for the local population would visit the site. At least they could see that the land is cleared. They could see that the land is registered in ZPC.
I think what I'll do right now, I think this is into three parts. There's the tender process. I think you've explained that. And with your indulgence, members of parliament, I'll probably invite questions for the tender. If there are any questions that you have on that, and then we'll then go to the next segment, which will be the payment processes, and then thereafter the work, the kind of progress right now. I want to break it down in that. So I'll then invite members of parliament if there are any questions relating to the tender process that just explained. Honorable Nsami, you had raised that issue. I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question to Mr. Chivayo, through you, Mr. Chairman, is to do with the processes that he had to go through as a result of requirements of the State Procurement Board. Is it on record that when he went there, he actually went against rules which are supposed to be applied with regard to him having been referred as a person with a criminal record? Is it official that he has a criminal record?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you for your question. First of all, when you participate in a tender, there is no clause that specifies or outlines issues of business people with previous convictions. A previous conviction does not mean the requirement in the tender document. And you seem to have missed my explanation. I did not say I traveled to see the partners after winning the tender. No. I went to see the partners first. Then we agreed to put a bid together with their balance sheets, with their profiles, because a tender document is not just 5 pages. It's more than 1,000, 2,000 pages explaining how you're going to put the solar farm, which is then marked. And then they say, yes, this explanation is correct. These people can do it. So Chint did everything. All I required was my certificate of incorporation and who are our directors and a few things from the local company. But the whole submission was based on Chint Electric's credibility, balance sheet, and experience.
Chairman, just on a point of order, Chairman.
Can I just answer the questions right through?
No, just on a point of order, Chairman.
Yeah, on a point of order, just hold on. Yes,
thank you, Chairman. I think, like what Mr. Chivayo just said, so can we safely say his company, Intertrek, was just a briefcase company? Can he admit that? Because from what he's saying to us now, the major company was Shanti, whatever he's calling it. Intertrek was just a briefcase company. Intertrek had no experience, it had nothing to do with what was supposed to be done. So the whole idea was Intertrek was just, he formed actually Intertrek specifically just as it being a briefcase company. Can you just verify that?
I think that question has been asked by Honorable Joe. I think that he will respond to that. I think...
My follow-up question before he passes there. My follow-up question is that, Mr. Chivayo, can you admit here that you abused the privilege of being a local? Because your company was just a facilitating company. You had nothing totally. So can we say you abused your privilege of being a local citizen to go and get people who have got money, who could come by their own, to come in and invest, and then you just benefit? And because the advantage and the disadvantage here is, if you're a local, you tell us that there's a discount that you are awarded. If it's not a local, he pays much more money. So the country has actually lost money because you intermediate as a local and you get a discount which was supposed to be coming to your company if you had invested with your money. But that discount went to a foreigner who is not supposed to benefit because he's not a local.
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member, but this is normal practice. This is how tenders are participated. You have a local company that works with an international partner. There is no abuse whatsoever of being a local.
But members, I think you have the power to invite the State Procurement Board, and I think some of these questions are directed to the State Procurement Board in terms of what criteria do they use in picking companies. We shall call the State Procurement Board to also respond to this. I think some questions are for the State Procurement Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just continuing. His other question was that, are you related to the former First family? And was there any assistance from them to win? I'm not related to the former First family, and at no given time did they interfere or assist me. Tenders are awarded by the State Procurement Board. The First family does not and have no influence whatsoever, in my respective view, to the operations at State Procurement Board.
Mr. Chivayo, you are prevaricating. Let me warn you. You say tenders are for the State Procurement Board. The question which you have not answered, you went to the Minister of Energy. And you still have not answered that question. And you cannot answer questions as and when you feel like answering them. The real issue which is sticking is how the tender was won. You went for a process, you lost. You went to the minister. The minister went to cabinet. And it's not a secret that the former president was no longer in control of this country. That's the reason why Parliament impeached him. He said the First Lady was de facto. So the Honourable Member is going to a legacy issue which we all know about, that the former First Lady was in control of government. And as a result, you had lunch with her. So that is where it is coming from. And ministers were reporting to her, just like Vice President going in with notepads. So that issue is critical for you to understand the background, why the Member of Parliament is asking that question, in that the First Lady was the power of the government of Zimbabwe. So in you having lunch or connections with them, was it not to influence a decision of a cabinet minister who then took your issue to cabinet? I think this is where you need to really clarify to the committee at the end of the day.
Chairman, where's in Dubai, or the lunch in Dubai?
Honourable Member, I think you are out of order. I think let us stick to the core business. Thank you. Can you clarify those issues?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this August House is mixing up the tender that I eventually signed. Is not the same one that I'm saying was cancelled and then I went to the minister. After it was cancelled, it was then cancelled again after we failed to agree. I thought I explained that. So I'm not saying this one was lowest bidder to specification. No minister called. And Minister Mavare was 2013. This was now Minister Undenge when we signed. So you're mixing up, and then you are saying you went and you saw a cabinet minister after having lunch. Lunch was 2015 in Dubai, and then Minister Mavera was 2013. So they're completely different. You're just adding up something.
Mr. Chivayo, I think it is important that you understand, and where there is clarity, I think this is emanating from the first tender, which you lost, if we heard correctly. You lost it, and you went to the minister. Are they right or wrong in saying that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. So to me, this is where it's all starting from, that you lost the tender, you went to the minister and said, you're a son of the soil, why are you not giving the tender? Yet there is a process which should be used in appealing if you're not happy. And you very well said there is the court process. And members of Parliament are still asking, if there is a court process, why did you not follow the court process?
Litigation is always...
There was a point of order. Honourable Mtayami.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My point of order, Mr. Chairman, I would kindly advise Mr. Chivayo, through you, Mr. Chairman, if he can clarify as to whether what he means when he says honourable members of the August House, they're mixing up things. He has to withdraw that. We are coming all the way to mix up things here.
When you seek clarity at any point, come through me and say, I think this is where you would want to more or less clarify. Members of Parliament feel totally insulted when you say to them, it's mixed issues. I think a better word next time could really fit the course.
Can you withdraw that? My apologies, Chairman. I withdraw the statement.
Thank you.
Yeah. For clarity, I'm saying Minister Mavaire was 2013. Minister Ondenge was there in 2015. So when they say you had the lunch in Dubai and then you came back to the minister who influenced the cabinet, they're completely different events with different timelines. That's what I was trying to get.
I think it is you who's mixing issues. Yeah. The first issue which you need to respond to... No, hold on, because we now need to be on track. The first issue which we've dealt with is how you won the tender.
Yes.
We are on that. Yes. And the members of the committee are asking that the first one you said you lost. It's you who said it.
Yes.
But you then went to Minister Mavaire. Yes. And yet, when you lose a tender, it does not say you must go to the minister. It says you must follow the due process of going through the courts. And this is where the issue is. Because once that is cleared, then there is clarity in terms of moving to the next phase. Because without clearing that, there is due influence in whatever you got after that. That's really, in summary, that's really what you must understand. Show that there was no due influence. Prove to this committee that you followed a due process like any normal citizen of this country. Because the question then arises, how many people also lost the tender? There were 3 companies, you said. So the other one lost and went home and probably went to court. So did that one equally go to the minister? That's the next question that would then have to ask the minister when he comes before us. Because why then award the one that came to you, which lost, and not the other one, that thing lost? So I think, in a nutshell, that's really what you need to more or less zero on in how the tender was given to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I continue to answer the other questions I've written down, I'll just respond to that. There were 3 companies that were compliant. Compliant in simple terms that they had passed the funding and technical specification. So ZTE, Intratrack, and the one that had been awarded number 1. So the request was, since there are 3 companies that are both compliant on funding and technical, why can you not award the compliant companies? Because they are able to do the work and they have the experience. So the other 3 had no chance because they were non-compliant. So the 3 that were compliant were then awarded. So whether ZTE went to the minister or also tried to lobby, I won't comment for them. But I went to the minister because litigation is always a last resort. So I went to the minister, I wrote to the chief secretary, I wrote a letter to State Procurement Board Chairman Kwaza, and we went and we saw him and we explained to him. And he also understood and said, yes, I'll consult my principals because what you are saying makes a lot of sense. The deficit is 1,500 megawatts. What reason do we have not to award other compliant companies as long as they are willing to match the price of the lowest bidder that we awarded? So it was a question of I was trying my luck. I wasn't just going to give up after putting a lot of effort. I had spent outrageous amounts of money putting together the bid, going to China, going to Germany, teaming up with the partners. So on the issue of...
So you were explaining, still we need to be on course. These 3 companies go, 3 are non-compliant, they don't get, these 3 are compliant, that's fine. One of them wins, all right?
All 3 won. All 3 were awarded.
All 3 won the Gwanda?
Not Gwanda, Gwanda and Sugamini and Munyati.
All 3 won?
Yes.
So when you went to the minister, you were going to minister to appeal on what?
To say these 3 compliant, is it not feasible for you to award them because they are compliant? You know, looking at the issue of power shortage.
The issue is this: you went to the minister. You went to the minister before you were awarded.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what the issue is. You went to the minister before you were awarded.
Yes.
So why go to the minister and avoid a due process which is there?
Well, that was due process because I then wrote letters right to the minister, to the State Procurement Board, and to the Chief Secretary saying I was going to try and go to court, but once I go to court, it would then stop the one who has been awarded until my determination of my legal battle. So in the interest of everybody's time, what was the basis? If I go to court...
I don't know. Are you aware that you are now getting the Chief Secretary to come here to this committee and respond? So we're taking note of all this. So the Chief Secretary can now work outside the State Procurement Board. So the question is, what is the purpose of the State Procurement Board? If we have executives interfering, and the whole point of the State Procurement Board is for fairness. But if you're now naming these people, clearly illustrates there was undue influence to you being awarded that. You've spoken about the Minister of Energy, you've spoken about the Chief Secretary to the Cabinet, you've spoken about equally writing to the Chairman of the State Procurement Board, yet already a decision has been made instead of you going to court. So I want you to understand that whole process. All these names that you're bringing in will be brought before this committee to ask them what powers do they have in terms of the functions of the State Procurement Board. I hope you're taking note of that.
Indeed, Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. I wrote letters to the Chief Secretary, and the response came signed by the Deputy Chief. Must have been Luke, the one who was in charge of Zimaset cluster. But I've got all the responses. And if this House would like to see them and the letters I wrote to make a follow-up, that is very possible. So,
in summary, what did the thing response when you wrote? What was the response?
The response from the Chief Secretary said that we confirm receipt of your, it copied State Procurement Board. We are in receipt of your letter talking about power, and we recommend that wherever necessary and possible, the country needs more power to ameliorate the energy shortages that the country is facing. Please find a way to resolve this without having to delay national projects. And that was it.
So the Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet,
the Deputy Chief, that is the one who then responded, was in
wrote
charge of Zimas.
that letter. Yes. Can we get the letters you wrote and the responses?
Yeah.
To this committee. When do you think we can get that?
I'll just look for them and then I'll
we need to have a time frame. Can we get those? When can we get those?
I'll go and start looking for them, yes.
You're not still giving us a time?
I think by the end of the week I should have found them.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So this was the question I was responding to. Are you related to the former First Family? I'm not related to them. Then the next question says you formed Intertrek in 2012. A year later I signed a contract with a year experience. It was not about...
So the other question you missed out from Honorable Ndewele is that what are your qualifications?
I have no qualifications. I'm not an engineer. I just run the company based on experience.
No, he has just responded to the question of what qualifications do you hold. You have no qualifications. That's fine. You have responded to that. You may proceed.
You formed this company in 2012, and a year later you signed a contract without experience. The experience that was looked at and the evaluation criteria was Chint Electric and not me. So the issues of the local company were neither here nor there. They were not important. What they wanted was an EPC contractor who can install a 100 megawatt solar farm, and Chint Electric was the ideal. Was this company registered for this tender only? I registered a company and decided to venture into power generation and participate in tenders. So I participated in other tenders that we also won, a lot that we've lost.
So in terms of the tenders which you have participated in, before this tender you won, were there any other tenders that you won involving this sort of business?
Similarly, yes, but during more or less during the same period, and we also lost many as well.
You are not answering my question. If the tender was given today,
yes,
okay, what I'm asking, before today, was there any work that you did pertaining to solar and renewable energy?
For Intratrek, no. It was all about the technical part.
Thank you. That's all we wanted. Thank you. You may proceed.
Then the next question says, was the quality compromised because you had quoted 250, but now your second bid you submitted 174. This is the reason why I left the European partners and chose the Chinese, because the Chinese were a much bigger company and were willing to give a better price. So on the second submission with Chint, the first submission was with Greenfield Solar Europa, and then the second submission was with Chint Electric China. So they gave me a better price, which is why I put 174 million. I hope that, so no quality was compromised. It was still a big company, just in fact much better than the Germans.
Chairman.
Follow up.
Thank you. That was my question.
I think, Honorable Chair, the man is under oath. If we know it takes 50 liters to get to Blawayo, and then a man comes back and says, I will now use 30 liters, quality was compromised. He must just accept it.
Point well noted.
Chairman.
Yes.
Should I respond to that?
Sorry. No, you don't have to respond to that. I said the point has been noted.
Chairman.
Yes, Honorable.
Chairman, I haven't been answered yet. The reason why I'm saying I haven't been answered, I asked him, he kept, in his presentation, he kept saying,
He's still responding to certain questions. Some are follow-ups coming through of people who asked the questions, so I have to go back to them.
Okay.
So let us allow him to finish responding.
Were you not sure with yourself, why did you change partners? Why did you do the feasibility after the tender? Were you not involved in Charles Kwaza's suicide escapade? Okay. I was very sure of myself, which is why I made a decision to change to the Chinese, because the Chinese were 100 times bigger than the Germans. And after doing my research, I saw that Chint would be easier for Zimbabwe to do business with a Chinese company than it is to do with the European community because of the sanctions. So it was a bold decision that I made, and I wasn't doubting myself in any way. That's the reason. And I changed partners because I wanted to go on a lower price. Why did you do the feasibility after the tender? It was a tender document. It said feasibility, engineering, procurement and construction, and the funding. So I think that's a question ZPC could answer best, because this was a requirement that once you win the tender, you identify the land yourself. Go and look for the land yourself. Then you do a feasibility. This was tender requirement. It was not my decision to say I would do the feasibility after winning. After being awarded, I did the feasibility. That was the tender document requirement.
Follow up, Chairman.
Honorable.
The follow-up is that were you a chancer or a briefcase businessman because you hadn't done this before, but you won the tender? You had never done it before, but you won the tender.
I think that question has been asked, he has answered it, and I think some of these questions are for the State Procurement Board, like I've said, to tell us the criteria that they use in giving tenders to people, whether briefcase business people or not.
And just to answer him as well, when you say briefcase businessman, it's a question of how you want to look at it.
I think I've said that it is for the State Procurement Board to ask the criteria that they use in picking. Yeah, I don't think if you're a true businessman, I don't think you want to really respond to, unless you are a briefcase businessman, you can respond.
Thank you.
Point of clarification.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Right, you mentioned that on the tender document, he was supposed to look for the land himself. So how much did he pay to Gwanda Town Council or Gwanda Rural Council? for the project.
No, but tender the site first.
Should I continue the questions or should I answer that one first?
Continue the questions which were given to you first, and then you can answer that later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you not involved in Charles Kuwa's? I didn't know Mr. Charles Kuwaza personally, and I was never involved in his personal life. I just knew him as the chairman of the State Procurement Board until his dismissal or resignation. May we know when you awarded the tender dates? I wouldn't have the exact dates, but I remember that we signed the contract on the 20th of October in 2015. And just to respond to your question, the land did not belong to Gwanda. The Minister of Lands is the one who gave us the land. We went to the Minister of the province in Mat South, who was Angelina Masuku then, and we told her that there's this project. Then she said, okay, there's land. We were given 225 hectares, a recommendation letter, which we then took to the Minister of Lands here in Harare, who then said, this is national project and we're interested in power generation. And then they gave us an offer letter and said, this land here. So we didn't pay anything other than the normal $100 or $50 filing fee and this and this. It didn't cost us anything.
Yes, follow up.
Honorable Chair, when they got the 120-something hectares offer letter, was it 200?
225.
225 hectares offer letter. In whose name was that land allocated?
Can you respond?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The tender said identify a piece of land. So as part of that requirement, it was Intratrek who had to say, we have found the land and it's here. So the land, the offer letter was in Intratrek Zimbabwe's name. But after signing the contract, we then handed over the land to ZPC in the interest of funding structures where the banks would be more interested in having ZPC own the land. So the minister withdrew the land and then handed it over to ZPC. But back then, it was in our name.
Mr. Chivayo, who drew up your tender documents?
The tender documents were prepared by Chint Electric. They had a team of 30 engineers, 4 lawyers working on the tender documents. The tender documents came from China sealed. The Chinese are very skeptical and they don't trust anybody. So right till the tender day, they come holding their documents and you go and submit together. They won't even tell you the price. You give them a guideline and they submit. So the tender documents came sealed and signed from China. All we added was our certificate of incorporation, who are the directors, our tax clearance, just a few documents we added into the funding proposal. Everything else came sealed from China.
Did you say to the allegations that Mr. Kajanji is the one who did your tender documents?
Those allegations, with all due respect, are baseless and nonsensical.
Don't you think this is unparliamentary language? We are in Parliament. We are not in Hollywood, neither are we in Dubai. I think you must respect Parliament and use the right language. May you withdraw that and replace it with an appropriate word. Thank you.
I apologize. I withdraw the statement. Those allegations are untrue. I wanted to put a lot of emphasis, but they are very wrong.
Honorable Mhlanga.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I would like Mr. Chivayo to clarify if Intratek has any relationship with a company called Terminal Engineers, and also to take you back a bit to say the offer letter for 225 hectares of land, is it still in Intratek's name or it is now in ZPC's name as we speak?
As we speak, the offer letter is now in ZPC's name, and Introtrack has had a relationship with the company called Terminal Engineers, which Engineer Kajanje owns, on the Gairezi tender. We participate in another tender with two companies from India, Bharat Heavy Equipment Limited and Angelique International. So because I'm very thorough, when they brought the tender documents, I said to them, can we have Terminal Engineers just to review that the presentation is impeccable?
I think I asked you, and you must be honest, that did Mr. Kajanje do your tender documents? You've said no. And I think it would have been good for you to say he did for this. Now you're saying it.
Oh, Mr. Chairman,
Now you're saying
we've been talking about the Gwanda solar specifically.
But what I'm trying to say
is Gairezi Hydro. So if you say which tender document, you're referring to Gwanda. So he had nothing to do with Gwanda. But if you ask about Gairezi, I'll tell you what input.
But what I'm trying to say to you, I think what I'm trying to put across to you is at times don't withhold information. You'd rather just put it forward. I asked you a question. Do you know Mr. Kajanje, any relationship? In this, he is not there, but in this, I work with him like this. Now it brings the question that you already have a relationship with him in doing this, and then he becomes a ZPC board chairperson. Do you see the link now? Whether he did not do this, you've had the relationship with him before. And then he becomes the ZPC chairperson. You've had him as a consultant, or you've hired this company to work on a certain project for you. So now what we are now looking at is the link between you and him, which we can now establish is there and you've admitted. With that link, what would be his role of oversight, even as ZPC board chairperson, in working with you? Just from a moral point of view.
Yeah, obviously, Mr. Chairman, erroneous conclusions can be made, but as a board chairman, he has no influence whatsoever into any adjudication or any awards by State Procurement Board. He is there for issues relating to corporate governance and ZPC, and adjudication is all about the management and adjudication committees that are set, and State Procurement Board that reviews the evaluation. The board chairman has no direct influence whatsoever. And actually, it was a coincidence that when I had given him this Gairezi to review, I said, I'm not sure about this Indian companies, charge me just to see how the presentation was. And then the following week, he phoned me and said, I got a letter from the minister saying I'm now the board chairman. Can I hand you over to someone else to assist you for any future work? And I said, yes. And that was it. And then that's when we cut ties.
Just follow up. Just to supplement.
Honorable Mhlanga first. Honorable Mhlanga first.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Mhlanga.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. What I just needed the House maybe to clarify is the nature of the relationship between Introtech and Terminal Engineers.
So that's a very good question. What is the nature of the relationship between Terminal Engineers and Introtech?
Or maybe can you elaborate further? When you say the nature, what is it exactly?
What sort of relationship do you have?
As of now?
Maybe Honorable Mhlanga will probably clarify more to you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you for coming to my rescue. I just wanted him to unbundle, perhaps to make it, more illicit, to make it more, to bring it out, to say this is the kind of relationship that we had. Tell us more about your relationship with Terminal Engineers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was referred to Terminal Engineers by another company called No Consult, which was being headed by Mr. Isaac Mpotsa. So Mr. Isaac Mpotsa said, whenever you want your documents reviewed, we have a very senior engineer, very experienced, who can assist you right through the future. I'm a bit more committed at no consult, and I can no longer be assisting you. So he then referred me to Engineer Kajanje in his individual capacity. And we had a meeting, and I told him my vision and what I wanted, where I wanted the company to head.
When were you introduced?
Was it here or in Dubai?
We were introduced in Zimbabwe. It must have been in 2015, end of 2015, or beginning of 2015 or end of 2014. I'm not really sure. I can't remember quite. Yeah.
It's very important to establish when you were introduced.
Yes.
You're talking about 2014. This tender was given to you 2015.
Yes.
So are you saying before this tender was awarded to you, you knew him?
No. The other tender was not awarded in 2015. It was awarded and signed in 2016.
My question is very clear. Did you know Mr. Kajanje before you signed this tender? That's where the question is. 2014 would mean yes, you knew him.
Yes,
if
that's
I
what
have to
I'm
go
saying.
by what you say.
I might be losing a bit. I might be missing it there, but I think I knew him by the time I was awarded the solar tender. Yes.
So you knew him before you were awarded the tender. Thank you. Follow up.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. When given that he wrote to the Chief Secretary and Mr. Kawaza, it's better to talk about a deceased and a late person in bed essence. Does Mr. Chivayo agree that
Mr. Chivayo, sorry.
Chivayo.
Chivayo. Yes,
Chivayo. Does Mr. Chivayo agree that the State Procurement Board, the resignation of Mr. Kawaza was due to fraudulent and maybe corrupt practices as a board member chairperson? Does he agree?
But he did respond to that. I think that was asked, Honourable Member, and it was responded to.
He agreed.
No, he did respond to that.
I disagree. And for the record, the whole delay for the project was because of Mr. Kawaza. If there was anyone that I hated the most, who delayed the project the worst, it was Mr. Kawaza.
I think let's speak good of the ill. We don't have to use of the dead. We don't have to use the word dead. I think we now need to go. You need to unbundle that relationship with yourself and Mr. Kajanje and the company called Terminal.
Just for clarity's sake, Chairman.
Yes, Honourable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity's sake, in the abundance of information which is coming out as a result of a question by Honourable Mklang, if Mr. Chivayo can avail to this House, are there chances that probably this contract which was coming in, you were advised somehow through Mr. Kajanje that please form this company so that we'll give you this tender so that we make money somewhere when you met, and if you can avail under oath as to whether you have had that chance somewhere, that you'll be given advice somewhere, somehow, so that you form this company.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not at all. I formed this company with my partner, my own accord, and we had our own vision. There was no influence whatsoever from Engineer Kajanje. And ideally, you could not then say he'll award because it's not him who awards.